your car too.
Let's go with the granny flag. Is that a Supra?
Who did it? Come on!
Dead white.
Hello, on this video we're going to be replacing the clutch cable on the KZ650. Shouldn't be too difficult. I've got my Haynes workshop manual, so I've kind of already read it, so I look like I know what I'm talking about, even though all of y'all are probably judging me for how I'm dressed because I was supposed to be working out instead of working on this, but here we are. So real quick, what we're going to do, first things first, we've got to get some of this out of the way. So we are going to be having to remove this piece of the case. And what I was afraid of initially was that there was going to be oil. I had to really look because while, I mean, there's gaps and it's just supposed to be a sprocket cover, that's a very large piece of case that's just basically a sprocket cover. But nevertheless, here we are. So we got to remove the starter cover, and then there's some 10mm bolts to go around here. We need to remove the shifter lever, and I'm probably going to remove this foot peg too because it's just 2 bolts. So hopefully we can do this with just a few tools and I don't have to break out anything fancy. But as you can see, the clutch cable actually broke on this bike. So that's what this video is about. That's what we're going to do. I don't think there's anything else I need to tell you other than be sure you've got some type of cable lube, and I need to also lube my throttle cables that I've also replaced, but I didn't do a video on that because I was playing that by ear. So let's just get right to it. First things first, 13mm. Why Kawasaki uses 13mm instead of a 12 or 14's beyond me. We're going to pull these off and the shift lever, and then we're going to start looking at taking off the starter cover. So that all came off real easy. I just used a small straight slot and very gently pried against the shift lever to get it to come out. Be careful that you don't put the blade in between the shaft and the case because you don't want to tear up the seal in there. So if you're going to pry, and I say pry very loosely because that's not what I did, a little bit of force behind it and it came out pretty easily. The peg came off easy, so I took off the top bolt for the starter cover, but I loosened the back one, didn't take it all the way off. Made sure I can move it around. I don't think this needs to come all the way off because there's the starter. So next thing is the bolts around the actual case, and I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, is it 4? Could we be so lucky and have it only be 4? Let's find out. Really was that easy. So carefully slide it off, and as you can see, we've got some gunk. Gonna try to roughly clean out as much of this as we can without ruining the garage. Probably should have taken it outside to do this, but at any rate, very interesting. I'm not mad that Kawasaki spent all that time and effort to cover the sprocket. Keeps the crap from getting on you. Thank you very much, Kawasaki. So there's where the cable attaches. Hold on, sorry. Here's where the cable attaches. So that looks like there's our cotter pin to pull out right there. Now it's just like the weird me part's just standing here staring at this mechanism and thinking about how it must work. I guess this shaft here? I don't know. I don't really want to touch anything. I don't know. Interesting. Because the clutch cable's not touching anything. I guess that's, I guess this shaft, it's squared. Maybe, nope, it's just crap on it. How in the world is it? Oh well, I'm sure somebody knows. Call me an idiot for not getting it. Very interesting. But there we go. So Let me clean this up before we get to this. So I got some of the worst of it off, just the pile of oil and lube and stuff, and I do see I'm gonna need sprockets probably next year, end of next year maybe, at least on the front. Back doesn't look that bad, but anyway, I still don't know how the clutch works. I actually looked at it in this shaft, and this shaft is just dowel, I think. It's just an alignment dowel that helps support this, so I still don't know. I'm gonna have to Google it and read up on it because it's very interesting. So let's just get to what we're doing here. There's a small cotter pin here. I'm gonna be very careful to not break mine because I don't have a replacement. Got to reuse it. I'm trying to make sure that you can see that. The camera will not focus. So we're gonna remove that, and then, as you can hopefully see, very sort of, the cable end comes up out of there. So when we remove the cotter pin, the cable slides up out of there, and then it slides through here, and I believe it's free until we get to right here, and this clip just pulls off. Let's just pull that off. Careful to not, bear with me here. There. We don't want to overly bend something that won't bend back. Put that down. And if yours isn't broken off, this will be maybe a little bit more difficult. Probably not, since we've removed everything, and you can, and I don't want to suggest that we twist this any more than we have to achieve what we're trying to do. We need some slack in this cable for y'all that don't have a totally broken cable. And pull your slack up to here, and you're gonna want to adjust all this all the way in and work your cable out. So that's where we're at now, and then leave it that way so we can put everything back together. So I'm gonna get my cotter pin pliers and pull out this cotter pin. And if anything else is different than as described, we will come back, but I don't think that's the case. And we do need to save this spring here. Yeah, that spring there, so don't lose that. So that wasn't too bad. The hardest part I had was pulling the cotter pin out, straightening it, and putting it back in underneath here. You might be able to take this off, this piece right here off, but I opted to not do that. I made one attempt, and those screws were so tight, I figured it would be easier to remove the cotter pin and replace it, which I have done. Make sure you lube your cables very well. I took a few minutes doing that until the juice came out the bottom. So what I'm gonna do now is rerun the cable up through the bike, and there was a second clip that I missed that was down here. I'm gonna rerun the cable and connect it up here before I put this case back on, and I'm gonna do that to make sure that this doesn't come out of alignment and everything else. So I have this adjuster all the way in per the book's instructions, and I have this in place, lube the cable. So I'm going to run it back through the bike and hook it back up to the lever, make sure everything is aligned, and then we'll put the case back on. I finished running the cable, put my clips back on, made sure to keep it away from the header as possible. And I haven't adjusted anything. I've got a lot of slop. Like, I don't feel anything. I'm assuming that's going to be in resetting this. Don't really know. It feels funky. I think I'm going to read. I'm wondering if I missed something under there that's supposed to go into that. I really don't know. So I'm going to research this a little bit and see if maybe there's something that I missed, or there's something that I missed for why there's just all that slop in it. I really don't know. So I'm going to look into that. I'm just a fucking dumbass. That's all it is. I'm just a dumbass. The dowel is called the clutch push rod. Good to know. That's how the clutch operates. The rotating mechanism screws out when you pull it in, and it pushes the clutch rod in and disengages the clutch. Now I know. So, clutch has tension now. I'm just an idiot. So, put everything back on. Make sure you line up everything the right way. I'm probably going to try to clean some of this up. It's just dirty. I mean, it just needs cleaned up. So, I need to look up the torque specs and torque these down and make sure you go cross. You know, I'm assuming magnesium alloy of some kind. No, they can break. It's old, and everything that's old I get real scared about breaking. So I want to torque all that down correctly, and don't forget to cover your starter back up. And the next thing we're going to do is actually taking this off and adjusting that mechanism per the instructions in the manual. So let me torque this back down the rest of the way and put this back on, and then we'll come to that. So it turned out to be between 6 and 7 inch-pounds for these 4 bolts that go around here. So I've taken this cover off now and put a straight slot screwdriver in the shaft there and back it, and use it and a 12 millimeter, and you can break loose that lock nut. And what you want to do is adjust the bolt until there's no slack and you feel resistance. And then the book says to back it off about a half a turn. I back it off about a quarter because the clutch lever was really sloppy, and I don't think that it's going to fully disengage the clutch like we need it to. So that's where we're at. I've still got a little slack in it, but make sure you back up the bolt with your straight slot when you retighten that back down. And that gave it a real good grunt to make sure it's as tight as it needs to be. And the clutch lever, I've got a little bit of slack there. I'm sure the cable's going to stretch a little bit once it gets worn in. But you can see, if I can hold really still. But anyway, so we're going to put this cover back on, and the rest is just reassembly. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. I'll cut back to when it's totally done, but if you're not needing to see it reassembled, you can sign off. Thanks, everybody. If you actually stayed to watch the reassembly part, please leave me a "you just lost this bet" in the comments. That's pretty much it. Just put everything back the way you had it. You want to be careful when you're putting the shifter back on and make sure you get it splined correctly. You don't want to mess that up. Put it all back to pretty good tightness, especially for the foot peg. This back nut is the one you need to make sure is tight. This one's more of a supporting bolt that goes through there to keep it from rotating on you. But other than that, that's it. Probably going to start it up and ride it around the block a little bit because I haven't run it since I changed all the ignition and everything. So thanks for watching, everybody.
Come on, boy! Come on! Yeah!